Wow.
Okay. So there's no possible way to cover all of the Gradebook's quirks and options in an hour. So we're going to do the very best that we can on some big picture methods of using the Gradebook, as well as a couple of little tips. I wanted to show you all something, though, quickly that some of you might have seen. Over the summer, we had a Moodle version update, and some of you, when you opened your Gradebook after that, is it not going to show it to me? Might have seen a green bar across the top of your Gradebook that said aggregate including subcategories was included in this Gradebook previously. You might revisit how you're using your Gradebook or something like that. If you have in your Gradebook seen a green bar across the top talking to you about aggregating subcategories, just X that out. That wasn't a setting you all should have been using anyways, because there was no one on campus who was actually using subcategories of categories in their aggregation. So no panic, just click the X and ignore it and you will be fine. Okay, I felt like that was important enough to say to you all because I had someone panic telling me their Gradebook wasn't calculating correctly, and actually when they took out that check mark, it was finally calculated correctly for the first time. So, okay, so let's take a look then at our navigation. Let me go back to the front page of the course. So for those of you who have never used the Gradebook before, you're always going to access it via the administration menu, and this is the same place your students are going to access it. They clearly don't have as much content in their course administration menu, but they will have a Gradebook link there. If you are not using your Gradebook or you have a problem with your Gradebook, please turn it off and hide it from your students. Let me show you how to do that. I always have students in my class who they have a faculty member who's not using the Gradebook, and yet they'll still click on it every day hoping grades magically appear. So if you don't use the Gradebook or you're having a problem and it's something big that we're working on, go into the Edit Settings page and scroll down to, let's see, I can never remember right off the top of my head. Right there under Appearance, Show Gradebook to Students. If you click No, then they won't even have a Gradebook link. So that way they won't be there, hopefully, like just hopelessly clicking it every day. All right, so let's go back then. We're in our administration menu. We're going to grades, and I'd like to talk about the 3 aggregation types that we use. So when you look at our Gradebook screen, it kind of looks a little overwhelming for a couple of reasons. Number one, you have to navigate horizontally. And that can be, I see Stephanie nodding her head. Stephanie Schellenberger and I have had a lot of issues with navigation, especially over the summer. My recommended way of just getting left and right is to just use the arrows on your keyboard. That's the easiest way to drag your screen either way, although there is a toolbar down at the bottom if you want to scroll all the way down to find that. So it can look overwhelming in that way, but then you also have all of these options up here, plus you have a drop-down menu to the left. Well, what you might not realize is that the drop-down menu to the left and the links across the top are the same content. So you can choose to use either. I often use the drop-down just because it's easier to see what each of the options are just in one glance. So where we want to focus for setting up our Gradebook is under Setup, and then Categories and Items. Anytime you are doing anything with your Gradebook aggregation, Categories and Items, where you need to be. This is also where you can organize the order in which your assignments appear in the Gradebook. So let's say you just want your Gradebook to add everything up, divide it by points possible, If there's not a score in a grade, you want it to just be left empty, you don't have to do anything. Your gradebook is going to default to what's called simple weighted. Empty grades won't count against the student, and it will add up, it'll sum everything that's in there and divide by what's possible for each student. Because remember, the empties don't count against them. So maybe the only thing you want to do is change the order that you have assignments listed in here, because they show up in the gradebook in the order in which you create them. Well, some of us get really ambitious at different points in the semester, and we may create a ton of assignments and then have actual early assignments after some of ours that are coming later. And so if you want to just rearrange your gradebook, leave it like it is, you just click on the little cross or plus sign. I'm a Christian, so I say cross instead of plus. And then pick which box you want it to go to, and click on that box, and you will be able to rearrange your gradebook that way. It is a little time-consuming to do that, but I would really recommend you take a look at the organization of your gradebook, because your students see a list that looks like this, and we want them to be able to read what we have out there for them. And if they're looking at a list that doesn't make sense to them in order, I know for those of us who have taught online, some of us go ahead and number even our face-to-face course assignments. So we might have like 1.1 for week 1, assignment 1, and the students love that. But at a minimum, if they can look at the front page of the course and the order the assignments are presented to them there matches the order that they see it in the gradebook, you will have higher student satisfaction on that alone. And that is something that I should have mentioned at the beginning. Dennis and I have spoken about this a lot. Research shows that there is a significant difference in student satisfaction between students who are in courses where faculty use the gradebook that's online and available to them 24/7, and those who do not, even those who maybe bring grade reports every couple of weeks. This is out there available to them. High schools use LMSs like this now. They may not put course content up there, but they'll put grades. So our students, many of them come here expecting this. So we want to have it for them. Okay, so back to our aggregation types and aside from my gradebook soapbox. So the minimum of what you want to do is add those assignments up, divide by points possible. You leave it just like it is, and then you can arrange it. But let's look at what our other options are. Anytime we're changing big gradebook aggregation, we go to our parent category. And the parent category is always going to be at the top, and it's the one that has the name of the course beside it. So we look for, in this case, my course is called Gradebook Training, so I'm looking for that parent category. I'm going over to the right and clicking Edit Settings. And I'm going to get my screen that shows me what remember, this parent category is controlling the whole gradebook. So the first thing I would suggest doing is just, if you've never done this before, just show everything so you can see what all of your options are. I promise you there are a ton of them you aren't going to use, and we're just going to highlight the ones that you are likely to use. So there's no need to change this category. We want to leave it the course name so we'll know it's the parent category. Okay. We have 3 aggregation types. The simple weighted functions like a sum, which is what I just talked about. It also functions another way, the way that gives you the name of it. Simple weighted, in the truest sense of what it can do, is you put however many categories you want in there, and that automatically divides the weights of each of those categories evenly. You don't have to set it. So if you are going to use categories and you have 4 different categories, then the system would automatically set each category to be worth 25%. If you have 5, it would automatically set it to be 20%. So the benefit to simple weighted is it can function beautifully just like sum of grades. But if you put a category in there, you're going to have to put another one in there, and then they're going to each be worth 50%. So if you plan on using categories in any way, don't use simple weighted unless you want them divided equally. Does that make sense, you guys? Yeah? Okay, we're good. Okay, so the other one, since I've already mentioned weights, is weighted mean of grades. This is one that a lot of us on campus use. I use this one, for instance. So in my Comp 1 class, I have 2 categories. Their essays are 65% of their grade, and then my other category is called etc., or everything else. That's where all the other assignments get dumped. So I want to set this gradebook up like that to show you guys. So we have weighted mean of grade. I'm always going to want to exclude empty grades. Unless you're one of those really odd people who like your students to start out at a deficit. We do have some colleagues that like that. Marty, that's not you, is it?
Maybe.
Yeah, it could be. No, there's someone in the social sciences. I can't remember who it is, but whoever he is, he freely admits it. What this would mean when I say starting them off at a deficit, if you uncheck exclude empty grades, then that means anything in the gradebook that doesn't have a grade in it is automatically aggregated as a 0. So for those of us who maybe have 15 assignments in, it's going to take them a long time to get to the positive side of their grade. So that's why I would encourage you, unless you're an odd social scientist, to leave that box checked. The other thing that you might want to take a look at in this top category is the keep the highest, drop the lowest. So if you want to keep, like let's say you have a category of quizzes, for instance, and you want to only keep their highest 7 of the 10, or you want to drop the 2 lowest. This is the way you can set that up. You just pick your number. The caveat to that, though, is that all the quizzes must be worth the same amount. So they all have to be worth 10 points, 20 points, whatever, because the way it's going to work is if you have 10 points and then you have a couple of 15, well, even if they scored lower on those, that's automatically going to be the highest quizzes that it's kept. Or if you have a couple 5 points in there, they're going to automatically drop that because they're considered the lowest. So the keep the highest, drop the lowest, either one of those, they both work great. You just have to make sure that you're using them on a category where everything is set to the same amount. Make sense? Okay. You'll want to leave grade type as value. We don't need to put in a maximum score. That's something that the gradebook calculates automatically. What you do want to look at, though, is the grade display type. We have several options here. So the default option is that it's just going to show a percentage, their overall percent out of 100. The other options that we have, though, are letter and real. And real is just points. So when you see like letter and then parentheses percentage, the way that that would display in your gradebook and the students is they would see the letter grade based upon your gradebook scale, and then they would see the percentage in the parentheses. Does that make sense? So for some people who have odd point systems that don't make sense to me because I don't love math, some of them want their students to also be keeping track of the number of points that they've earned, but they want them to be able to tell at a glance what letter grade they have. So those types of gradebooks would be best served to use letter and then parentheses real. Make sense? We all good? Okay, so for my sake, I just use percentage. And then I'm going to save my changes. Okay, so all I did, the only thing I changed on this was I set the parent category to weighted mean of grade. That's it. Everything else I left the same. And now that I have this, when you use weighted mean of grade, I have to have categories. So I'm going to have 2 categories. And I'm going to call my first one, because I'm unoriginal today, it's Friday, I'm just going to go with my comp stuff and I'm going to call it essay. And I want to make sure that I'm excluding, I'm not dropping any essays, they only do like 6, all of them count. And what you do for this to work, the way that we need it to work, your parent category is weighted, and then your categories that you're setting up need to be set to simple weighted. So that was my default. So the only thing I've done on this screen is type essay. And I can check if I want to change it from a percentage if I want to or whatever, but I like my students to see percents because they know They've grown up with what 100% is, what a 65% is. So that's the easiest thing for them to understand quickly. So for a weighted gradebook, I just changed that to simple. And I'm going to save my changes. And just because I want to be most efficient, I'm going to go ahead and create my other category right now before I move anything. If you guys have a question at any time, do not hesitate to stop and ask me. Okay, so I didn't put this in there earlier, so I could show you we have two ways of doing it. When you're setting up your category, if you click Edit Settings again, it's going to take you right back to that screen. I want to expand everything because I need to set my weight. So the essay category for me is worth 65%. So I would just type in a 65 here and click Save. So I could do that while I'm setting it up. It's under Parent category. Or when I get back into the Gradebook, if you'll look, my Everything Else category here, I could just put my 35% in there and save changes down here. So you can do that however you want. You could set up all your categories and then go back in and add the weights all at one time if you want. If you only have, let's say, 50% of your grading in the gradebook and like their final is the other 50%, it's not going to hold that final out there. Like their grade will probably be, depending upon how their performance on the final is, possibly be artificially inflated because it's acting like the 50 that you have grades in for is 100% of the gradebook at this time. I just want to be sure you guys know that. It doesn't like hold points out because they haven't taken the final yet. It calculates according to what's in there, even when you have the weights separated. Does that make sense? Y'all good? Okay. So I just want to show you how to move a couple of assignments. So you can do it one at a time, like I showed you earlier, clicking the cross/plus sign. Or you can go through here and just, for some of you, because we have a wide display here, some of you may have to use your keyboard arrows to tab over to see this actions and select columns on that. But you just make your clicks, scroll down to the very bottom, choose what category you want them in, and then the system processes it and moves them for you. Just because I'm like housekeeping, neat, weird person when it comes to my gradebook, what I would encourage you all to do, because we recycle our courses, I would encourage you all to create a category that's called old, not used, whatever you want to call it, and make it a hidden category and put all the assignments from your course in that category. And then move them out as you decide whether or not you're going to use them again. Because as long as an assignment and a category is hidden from students, they don't see it. But if you have these old assignments just showing up in the gradebook, that can be confusing for them. And we don't want to confuse them any more than we normally do on a day-to-day basis. Yes, ma'am.
So if I've hidden those weeks and those assignments, it'll still show up in the gradebook?
If you've hidden the weeks, they'll see them. They won't see them in their gradebook, no. Okay. If the whole block is hidden.
Right, now, like I'm only showing like the next 2 weeks at a time.
Okay. Are you hiding the previous weeks?
Now that we're getting into week 5, I'm going to start hiding week 1 and 2.
Okay, well, I'm really glad you brought that up, Rachel, because what happens when you do that is that then hides it in the gradebook.
Okay.
And so what you have to do, it's still, this still can work for you. You just, once you hide them there, go back into the gradebook. And so let me just pretend like this assignment is one on one of your weeks that's hidden. I'm clicking on Edit for that assignment, clicking Edit Settings, and then I am just making sure that it's not hidden.
Okay.
That it's shown.
Okay.
So as long as you do that, you'll be okay. But
because otherwise when they're in the course, the main page, they have to scroll down.
Which I make them do. There's a little box that we can add that's called, I can't remember what the name of it is, but it says Jump To, and it has all the weeks listed. Okay. And if you have your course run by dates, then it'll highlight whichever week you're on, and so they can just click it and bounce down to that page. But if it makes sense to you to hide the week, then do it. Just make sure you go back into the gradebook so they can see the assignment. That is such an important point, because there is a setting that our gradebook defaults to that says if an assignment is hidden and that it's included in aggregation, hide the course total from the students. So if you have a course total that suddenly goes away and you've hidden an assignment, it might just be a setting we need to change. Make sense?
Don't you need to do that on the categorized area? Actually, put it in the category.
We don't have to do that anymore. We did when we used some of grades, but now we don't have to anymore, thankfully. Okay, so we've added a couple categories. I would definitely recommend that you use the check mark and the drop down to move your stuff, because sometimes it can be difficult to ensure that you're actually in the category. Like, you may think you have everything in the category, but instead it's just under the category. And so if your category total doesn't have any points in it, and you can tell that because, like, right here, it's showing, I'm not seeing it. It looks like I have 100% because that's how the percentages work. I have to go to a different screen to see if I actually have anything in it. So it's just easier if you use the check marks to move your stuff until you get started, and then you're just like slotting them in between assignments. Questions about that? Was there anything else I wanted to tell you about arrangement here? Yes?
When you move them,
They're just moved in here.
Does it put them in order that you've moved them?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you
then
click them in a weird order and move randomly, then you have to
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, it should move them down as the chunk. Whatever order they're in there. So you still may then want to use the plus sign to put them in order there.
Okay.
But the other thing you can do is when you're setting up assignments, if you have your gradebook categories set up already, and this is what is the easiest. If you're in an assignment,
in this video, we're going to talk about.
I don't love autoplay. Okay.
In this video,
I still don't love autoplay. Especially when. Okay, so this screen looks familiar to you, right? Because this is what it looks like when you're setting up an assignment or you're editing assignment. If you go to grade, we can choose on this screen from our setup, if we have our categories set up already, we can choose what category we want our grade to go in from the very moment that we create our assignment. So some of us think ahead, and we set up our gradebook before we start adding assignments, and then we can just slot them in whenever we're creating. Some of us don't always think ahead every semester, and we get in an assignment creating frenzy, and then we realize, well, doggone it, I'm going to have to rearrange everything. I have found, as part of Party 2, that it's faster for me to rearrange it in the actual gradebook. Some people like to go back to the assignments and do it. It's just a preference thing for you. Whatever you want to do that works for you. As long as you're staying organized, that's what matters. Okay, so we talked about 2 aggregation types. We've talked about simple weighted. We talked about weighted. Any questions about either one of those? No? Okay, so this one is the exciting one, as exciting as the Moodle Gradebook can get. And it's brand new, and it is called Natural. This gradebook aggregation type actually comes from, for those of us who've been on Moodle for about 10 years, do you all remember how bad it really used to be? Mm-hmm. I mean, people think they have it bad now, but it used to be super, super ugly and scary. Well, at that time, LSU decided we can do this better. The great thing about Moodle is because it's open source, people can create different things, and then maybe it'll become part of Moodle Core someday. So like 10 years down the road, finally, Moodle decided that they wanted to adopt part of LSU's gradebook. And I think they might have even combined it with someone else. I don't want to just falsely give LSU all the credit. If I'm forgetting another university, I'm sorry, but you'll be fine. What this Natural does is it allows us to do any of the things that we could do on any of the other categories. What Moodle would eventually love to see is this be the only aggregation type. And I hope after you see it, you'll understand why. So let's just take a look at it. Okay, so when we look at this, you'll see that it looks pretty much the same, except we have this weights column here going on. Okay, well, we set up our weights earlier, but when I flipped to natural, you can tell that the system went in and changed all of those weights, including my category weights. Because what natural does is just like simple or sum aggregation, it's aggregating your gradebook by points. So if an assignment's worth 100 points, it's going to be worth 9.615% of your grade. If it's worth 10 points, they're all going to be worth 0.962. So you see that sum or simple aggregation in front of you with this. So what that means is if you want it to just operate simple, aggregate, divide by points possible, get your total, you can leave it as is. If you want to use weighted, we can do the exact same thing. You just need to get your assignments all in their categories and then set the category weight. Does that make sense? Have I lost you yet? Okay, because I'm about to. I know. I want you all to be like holding on now. This is what makes it, in their minds, the super functioning gradebook part. The great thing about this is you can set the weight of any assignment. So let's say that in your final exam category, you have 2 assignments. So maybe your final exam category is worth 50% of your grade, and both assignments are 100 points, but you want one of those to be worth 30% of the whole course grade and the other worth 20% of the whole course grade, even though they're just 100 points. Well, all you would do is once you have them in the category, you would just put a little check mark there, and you can change the weight. So what that means is you can control the weight of every assignment in the gradebook regardless of what its point value is. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, I mean, I know it's a simple concept, but if you're, you know, a humanities person and not a math person like myself.
So if I change that percentage on that grade to be more than the total course, it automatically adjusts all the other.
It automatically adjusts all the
assignments.
others. Yep, you don't have to do it yourself. Can you imagine what a nightmare that would be if you had to do that kind of math?
That's why I'm not a math major either.
Yeah, so you can just change that. Again, you can use it just like weighted. You can use it just like simple, or you can use that added functionality of controlling the points. Controlling the value regardless of the points. Here's a less extreme way of how you may want to use that. So in my Comp 1 class, I said that their essays are worth 60% of their grades. And they'll have, let's just say they have 5 of those. Well, they're all worth 100 points, and so that means each of them are worth 20% of that 60% of my gradebook. Does that make sense? But should their first paper really be weighted as heavily as their final essay? If you've been in my comp class, you would know the answer is no to that question. So what I can do then is make that one maybe worth 30%, and then it'll split the points amongst the rest, even though they're still all just 100 points total. Does that make sense? And what I love about this is even though freshmen don't always get it on the first go-round, that column of weights shows up in their gradebook view also. And if you use this or weighted grading with categories, please, please pull up a view of this screen once you get it cleaned up and let your students see, like have them open up their laptops and open up their grade view, because they do not understand weighted grading. They think, well, I was doing really well, and maybe like in my 30% category, I've taken a ton of grades and they have an A. And then all of a sudden they turn in an essay and they didn't perform that well on that essay, and so maybe they have a B- now, or a C even, and they get really upset. And so from the very beginning of the semester, I have them pull up their gradebook and we look at it to be reminded that this is how weighted grading works. Things in this weigh less. So I always explain I always pose the question, if you were going to skip an assignment, which category would you choose to skip from? And after they've answered that question a time or two, and maybe they've skipped one out of the 60% category, they know the answer to that really quickly. I've actually had students come back to me later on and say, I'm so glad you showed me how to do that as a freshman, because then when I got in my junior and senior classes, when they don't talk to us about what their gradebook's like anymore, I could look at the gradebook and see, hey, if I'm having to manage my time, where could I maybe skimp on something that won't get me in as much trouble as a big assignment would. So I would encourage you guys to teach your students how you use your gradebook. Stephanie.
When you switched from the weighted means of grades to the natural,
Yes, ma'am.
why did the essay weigh the equal amount as the everything else? It says 9.615,
Yes.
9.615. Wouldn't it be, because wasn't it 65 and 35?
It was when I had it set up, but when I had it as weighted grading. But as soon as I switched to natural,
Right.
it became just a 100-point assignment all of a sudden, because there's nothing in that category right now. So what I do is, once I get all of my assignments in there, then I change the weight.
Okay.
So get your assignments moved in there, then change the weight and save it. But even if I wanted to just, I could change it right now.
Okay.
And if I put that at 60%, oh, I didn't check the box. Checking the box is clearly an important step. I could do that now for 65. Scroll down, save changes, and you'll see that once it's doing math, it'll change the weights of some of the other assignments. Okay?
So back on your recycling classes.
Yes, sir.
We put everything in categories, or what do we call it?
Uh-huh.
And we use this.
Yeah.
And we bring assignments in piecemeal. Wouldn't those category weights be changing progressively through the semester?
If you're not,
As you bring those assignments in?
are you putting them in the category automatically?
I'm not doing it. I'm just saying if you had them all in uncategorized, like you suggested a while ago,
Yes.
and you use this system.
You pull them out of that.
And put them in a little bit of time, would your category weights be changing?
No, not if you've set the category weight. The category weight itself won't change.
So you have to preset them,
Yes.
and just let it default. So that's another step, right? If you do that if you bring them out of uncategorized.
If you bring, okay, so what I would suggest is if the cleanest way to do this when you recycle is set up all your categories. So for me, that would only be 3. My essay, my everything else, and my not used. Set those up, pull everything into my not used, and then set the weights on my 2 categories right then. Save changes. And then when I pull things out or change when I'm creating the assignment, then that's going to be set automatically. Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yep.
you need to set your weights for sure. If
Yes,
you're gonna do that, right?
in the beginning.
Rather than letting it just default.
Yes, because if it defaults, you saw what it'll do. It'll be 9%.
And then it would change every time you brought an assignment in.
Maybe.
Just like it did when you brought
Yeah.
the essay.
Probably so. I already told you I don't do math. I'm giving you all I've got right now. I don't know what else you want from me. Okay, now
I have a
this.
question.
Yeah.
So on your everything else category,
Yes.
I know you didn't set the weight, but then the items inside that category
Don't have one.
So if it's categorized, then you can't weight it differently within a category?
I sure thought you could. We had played with that, but it doesn't look like it, does it? Mark, will you email me that question?
Okay.
Because I thought like I said, this is brand new, and I'm not using this on mine, which probably I should be. It would make me a better person. But I sure thought that you could. So email me that and let me look at that. Okay, there are 2 things that I want to be sure that I point out. One is you can use extra credit now with any of the aggregation types. So if you have an assignment that you want to be extra credit, you can go into the assignment, click Edit Settings. Yes, I want to leave this page. I'm okay with it. And you just click Extra Credit on that and save changes. So in the past, we've had some that it didn't work really well with, but now it works with all of them, and you can use them fine without any problem. The other thing that I want to point out is adding a grade item. So all of these that have the red links are items that were added on the front page of your course. Sometimes you may have something that you don't want on the front page of your course. I don't really know what reason that would be, but maybe you don't want it on the front page of your course, but you want it in your gradebook. I don't know what reason that would be for, but this is the other reason that you might use this. You can actually set an assignment to be worth more than 100 points if you do this. This is the only way you can do this, and that's to create the assignment directly in the gradebook. So you do that by clicking Add Grade Item, give it whatever name you're going to give it, whatever point value you want it to have, put it in the category it needs to be in, and save changes. So I'm going to make this one a 200-point assignment, and I'm leaving it in, out of the category, clicking save changes. So again, this is the only way that you can create an assignment that's worth over 100 points, or if you want it to be in the gradebook and not on the front page. It default creates to the bottom of the list, just like your new assignments that you create on the front page will do. And what I want you to be sure that you notice is when you look at the gradebook, the only way you can get items completely out of your gradebook, even out of the not used category, is to delete them off the front page of the course. That's the only way they're going to go away, is for you to get rid of the assignment. That's not true for this. The only way you can get rid of these manually created assignments is to delete them here. If you like to use these, just putting them straight into the gradebook, I'm trying to think, we used to have a colleague that didn't put anything on the front of her course. She just created everything directly in the gradebook, and it worked for her. So if that's what you choose to do, it's functional. You can do it, and it'll still work. Questions about that?
Jen, do you have to put the grade directly in the gradebook?
That's where I'm going next. This is another change that I love that happened over the summer. Well, this is the change that I love that happened over the summer. Okay, so I'm going back to my big grader report. To do that, I click on View, and now I'm back on this page. So as you guys who have been here for a while know, you can enter grades directly in the gradebook by just clicking on that, putting in your number, and putting in your feedback. Does anyone know how I feel about that? If you don't know, then you've never talked to me about it. I am anti this, because what happens inevitably is people accidentally enter scores in the course or category total, and then I have to go in, and I love you all with the love of Jesus, but I have to go in and manually unlock every single one of those assignments, and it takes me a while to do that, and I'm happy to do it, as you can tell. But we have a great alternative now. So what our great alternative is, when you're in the grader report, we have this thing called single view now, and I love it. So what you can do on single view is you can choose to view by grade item or by user. So let's say I want to view by, I'm going to go down here to practice, that one that I created manually that's worth 200 points. So I'm going to get my list of students, I put in their grade, and I type in their feedback, I click update, and it's put in the gradebook for us. I love this. If you have, and some of y'all teach classes, especially some of those bigger gen eds like in business and in theology, some of you guys might have 30 to 40 students in there. What I love to do is you can just click a bulk insert, and so any grade that's empty, you can give it a value of, let's say everyone was there that day and you want to give everybody 10 points because you're just feeling like Santa Claus. You can just click that, put 10 points, click update, it'll put their 10 points in there automatically. Or the other way that it works is if you're looking at student assignments as you grade them and you put them in, you can click this and put a 0 there. And so then all of the places where you didn't enter grades, it will go in and put the 0 for you. Because remember, if you don't have a 0, how is it aggregating in the gradebook? It's not counting against them. Yeah.
Is that the same thing if you had it coming off with Moodle into rather than a grading item? You can use that same thing to fill in, like on an exam, if you had 2 or 3 people that didn't take it.
Yes.
It's not showing that they didn't take it in their grade.
Yeah.
So you come in here and
Put those zeros.
and then it'll shade it in the grade book.
Yeah. And the other thing that you would do this for sure is forums. Because remember, if a student doesn't post on a forum, you don't have a place to enter a grade for them. So you have to come into the grade book, and that's why for me, I'm not teaching an online class right now, but I was thinking about how really useful this would be with all the forums online, and how we don't know sometimes until we get to the end, if we have a large enough class, until we get to the end of that batch of grading, who has a 0. So if you come, like you enter their forum grades as you move through the forum, well then come to single view, click that, mark the 0, click update, and everybody that you don't have a grade in for will automatically be given a 0. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I think this is a great tool.
But if you allow them to make it up, then you got to remember to come back in here and override that.
Yeah, you could change it on this screen. It's easier than it used to be. Yeah, because you can change it on this, it doesn't lock it like it did when you had to change it directly in the grade book.
But that grade won't get in there unless you use something in the grade book, right? If you
Oh, you're talking about if you've used a Moodle test and you've entered a 0,
right.
You have to go in and
It
manually.
won't allow that automatic grade.
That's exactly right, because Moodle doesn't let makeup tests override a grade hand entered. So if you've entered a 0 there and they beg you in such a pretty way that you want to let them make it up.
Athletes, I mean,
Yeah. Whatever reason.
Well,
Well,
you just begging, sometimes you have to.
well, you wouldn't have necessarily put a 0 if it was in that quick of a turnaround, would you?
Well, I'm kind of like Marty over here. I think that they need to get it made up by the average in their score.
Oh, okay, so you go ahead and put that in quickly. Okay, yeah, then you'd have to come in here and put that score in. Marty, he blamed you for something.
But
I
you-
noticed that.
But you can put it right on the grade book too, can't you?
You sure
delete the
can.
0 and then put it
You
in there?
can.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Yeah,
just
I
know
mean,
how I
you
feel about
You
this.
got to remember to come in there and
You do.
do that.
That is an important note about tests. Okay, so I showed you could do it by item. You can also do it by user. So I don't know if Mark still does this, but Mark Winslow used to do a thing where he'd grade a bunch of students' papers, and then he'd go in and enter them by student. And so this is a way that if you have your stuff entered by student and you have a stack of their stuff to enter, you can come to this page and do it. So two viewing options there. Okay, there are 2 other things that I want to show you. So let's go back to grader reports. If you are all the way over to the left, you see the student's name. In that second column, there's a white piece of paper with a little orange check mark. If you click that, you're going to see what the student sees, except for the hidden stuff. They just don't see anything where the hidden is. But this allows you to see what grade the student is showing and what assignments they're seeing and how it's organized for them. So if you want to do that, again, you're on grader report, click the little white box with the check mark in it, and you'll see their perspective. Questions about that? Okay.
Is that always checked, or, I mean, do you have to purposely check it?
No, it's already there.
Okay,
It's just to let you know.
okay.
Okay, so I want to show you, I mentioned earlier that there's a default setting that is aggregate. I can't remember, I told you what it was earlier, hopefully you remember. Oh, it doesn't aggregate, it doesn't show the course total if you have grades hidden. So a lot of us haven't looked at this setup tab here. And you can, again, navigate to this by the drop down, but it's a good idea to click on setup and look at these 2 links, the course grade setup and the My Preferences setup. The My Preferences, that's just for you, how you're seeing the grader report, but the course grade settings controls how everyone views the grade book. So that's where you would have the opportunity to uncheck that. You know, don't hide the total just because I've hidden a grade. There are a few settings here. You can choose how grade items are always displayed. You can choose how the overview is. There are some settings down here about rank in class and average in class. I don't, for FERPA purposes, I don't think those are your best bet, but they're here. So just know that you might want to check this out at some point, as well as the grader report. Just understand the grader report is only your perspective. what you see. Questions about that? No? Okay, one last thing then. It is very important that at the end of the semester, before you reset your course, that you export your gradebook. I remember one of my colleagues, when she retired, she had boxes of old blue gradebooks. Most of us don't have those anymore, and we do need to have divisionally, departmentally, whatever that policy is for however long the department wants to keep your gradebook. You need to find out what that is if you don't know already. But you may just keep that in your own personal file. There may be a policy in your department where they want it on the V drive somewhere. You will have to figure that out with your people. But to export this, you just click on export. The best way to do it is an Excel spreadsheet. And then what you'll do is choose what you want to export. So I would just leave everything. And then you can choose some options. I like to include feedback because what I typically do, if a student's missed an assignment or maybe they made it up or worst case scenario, they plagiarized on something, whatever, I'll make a note of that in their feedbook so they'll know when they look in their gradebook. If I made a note of it in their gradebook, I probably think it's worthy information to hold on to. So I like that to be part of my export file because if there was some weird grade audit, grade review kind of thing, and they needed to open this back up and try to understand what happened a year ago, if my comments weren't in there, then they wouldn't, it'd be a little more difficult. So then you just click download and you'll have an Excel spreadsheet that you can put wherever you need to put it, and then you can go through the reset process. And that's all there is to that. So that's a lot of information in a very little amount of time. So where are you all mentally? Laura just smiling at me. We're somewhere.
I have two comments. One, none of this feels very natural.
No, I know. Right, don't you love that's the aggregation
Exactly.
thing?
And then why did it take them 10 years to come up with the natural? Like, I mean, it seriously is.
LSU probably had it in less than 5.
Wow.
But, I mean, the wheels of change move
Yes.
slowly, even in technology sometimes. And here's the thing, Marty, that's actually an important question because we have sometimes people who don't understand what it means to be externally hosted. So if you Google Moodle stuff, you'll come up with lists and pages, since Moodle's an open source product, of add-ons that people have created. If you can code, I don't know, Mark, I'm probably going to say the wrong words here, but if you can code and create something that, I don't know, ties your shoes for you in Moodle, you can do that. And you can add it onto your Moodle site. However, if you're externally hosted, as we are, and we're hosted by Moodle Rooms, we can only add the add-ons that are approved by them. So it's like the LSU Gradebook, as soon as they had it done, they had it packaged, ready for people to go within 2 or 3 years. But for Moodle Rooms to finally accept it, they didn't do it until Moodle itself added it as a core product. So that's why, like, I've had people contact me about adding certain textbook components, and the sales rep will say, yeah, we're friendly with Moodle. We have Moodle products. You have to then go on and ask, yes, but what about Moodle Rooms? Because that's who we're with right now. And they don't always have products that have been approved by Moodle Rooms. So, and if you get into a conversation with a rep at that point, feel free to bring me in because there's what's called a plug-in matrix. It's not as exciting as it sounds. It's a list of all the things that are approved by Moodle Rooms. And we can very easily look and see if your publisher has that and whether we can implement it or not. Okay. Any questions? Are you all just ready to go do your gradebooks? Yes, Rachel.
Well, this is my first semester teaching. Athlete grade reports. Is there an easy way to get that turned in?
Well,
or is that like not even in Moodle? Is that in Portal?
No, what we're doing now are just the first quarter grade reports. Like it's for everyone now, not just athletes. Okay. So in the olden days we had athlete ones, but let me go to one of my classes that has the ILP block. That's a good question. So I know you all are all taking attendance this way. Yes. If you're not, you better start. So you're just going to the midterm grade and there are these different columns.
Okay,
And you just put their stuff in there.
okay. So I can open up 2 screens and,
Well, it default, it puts, if your gradebook's aggregating correctly, it puts stuff in there
Oh,
for you
okay.
already, and you just
so then I just
transfer it.
have to submit it?
Yeah, check it first. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, like if someone's got an 89.9, it's gonna show in your gradebook as a B+. Do you want that to be a B+, or do you want that to be an A- kind of thing?
Okay.
Then you have to drop, little drop down to get the mid-quarter thing.
Yeah, to pick
Okay.
which thing it is, yeah. Any other questions?
The Jewel
The Jewel gradebook?
grader, I'm
Yes.
seeing it on the student side, I think, but I'm not finding it on the faculty side, the teacher side.
Okay, so,
Jewel gradebook's there, but I'm not finding Jewel grader.
okay,
But I think when I log in as my generic student, I think it's still up in the left-hand corner for them.
well, for us, if we're doing something, we can click the Jewel grader link in the administration.
Well, I'm not finding it on mine. Where is it?
It's right here where my cursor is.
Okay, it's automatically there.
Yeah, it's automatically there.
Okay, I was just
And
looking
then
in
you
the wrong
just-
spot.
You just pick which assignment you
But
want.
didn't it- Is that the only place it used to be?
Yeah, it's been there for a while.
Okay.
But that list has expanded,
Mhm.
so it might have just gotten lost.
I just overlooked.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, I want to show you guys one more thing. You can leave if you need to leave. But I was working with an adjunct yesterday who had no idea that these existed. So I want to show you, if you don't know about our reports, it may change your life. It did hers anyway. So if you look at the administration menu, you can click on reports. Probably the simplest one to use is the logs. You can use the others for different things, but if a student's emailed you and saying, I had so much trouble uploading X assignment, what can I do? Like, that's why you didn't get it, and that's why I'm emailing you 2 days after it was due. So you can pick that student, and you can look at all of their logs, or you could pick, like, let's say they emailed you about their Turn-It-In assignment. And so then you click the logs, and you can see, oh my, well, you had problems because you didn't even click on that assignment. That would be why you had a problem. That happens sometimes. So just so you know, you have options to view what activities your students have done. And one that I really like to use for my own personal assessment purposes in regards to like what content I have in the course, if I click on the activity report, it'll tell me how many times in a group, like how many times aggregated that item was viewed. So maybe I have all these ancillary materials that I think super awesome. Yes, this is happening, of course. And then at the end of the semester, I'll click on it and maybe no one looked at them. Or maybe one person looked at them. Well, it might not be worth it to fill up my front page of my course, you know, because they're not interacting with it. Or maybe I posted a help video there and people are still emailing me the same questions, and I go back and look and I see 3 people it's been clicked on only 3 times. Then I can send an email and say, guys, please check this video out. It'll answer the questions that you have. So you have options both for exploring how a specific student or how a specific assignment has gone, but then overall seeing the logs for how your content has been accessed. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, as always, just send me an email. Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
And remember, if you all want to go back and watch this again, if there's something you want to see how to do again, we're on the YouTube, online resource center on YouTube. So you can always watch all the trainings there. And Debbie has, she's picked a couple of numbers here randomly. So the winner of the selfie stick is Robin Bryant.
What? Never take it too long for.
Now you have a stick. And then for the wireless charger is Rachel Johnson. Thank you all for coming, and I think there's a little bit more food if you're not filled up yet, so help yourself.
My granddaughter will probably be able to figure out how to use it. Well, in the social media, that.
Yeah.
Mine